The United States is launching a multinational maritime effort to increase its surveillance over a strategic oil supply waterway in the Middle East. Operation Sentinel comes after more than 2 months of mounting tensions between Iran and Western countries over oil tankers being attacked and seized in the Strait of Hormuz. American forces, meanwhile, are returning to a base in Saudi Arabia that's been abandoned since the U.S. toppled Saddam Hussein 16 years ago. Washington is sending more than 500 troops, a fighter jet and defensive missiles to the Saudi air base, a move that's been in the works for weeks. And in another big development, Iran seized a British-flagged tanker on Friday, saying it collided with a fishing boat and violated maritime regulations. It's currently anchored in an Iranian port. The UK is threatening Tehran with consequences over the vessel seizure. Reporting on that, our correspondents in New York, but first London.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard has confirmed that it has seized it. We know that Iranian state news agencies, what they're saying, and they're claiming that the British tanker actually took off its tracking device, switched it off and ignored repeated warnings. The government here in Britain trying to look at de-escalating tensions and measures to try and retrieve that vessel and indeed see what's happening to the crew on board. Of course, this ramping up of the pressure around the flow of the oil in the Gulf is coming at a critical time, as we know that Tehran has threatened retaliatory measures following the seizure of an Iranian tank by the British Royal Marines seized off the coast of Gibraltar earlier this month. That was called Grace 1. British authorities suspected that Grace 1 was carrying oil, Iranian oil, headed towards Syria, which, as we know, is in direct violation of EU embargoes and sanctions. Now, at the time, there was speculation that the United Kingdom was following the orders of Washington. And again, we have heard that Gibraltar has extended the detention of that vessel.
Washington has condemned Iran's actions, calling them escalatory violence. This is what we've heard from U.S. officials.
This is the second time in just over a week the UK has been the target of escalatory violence by the Iranian regime. The US will continue to work with our allies and partners to defend our security and interests against Iran's malign behavior.
Now, at this point, U.S. President Donald Trump has spoken with both UK officials as well as French President Macron. And in addition to that, we heard Trump speaking from the Oval Office regarding the situation, and he appears to be issuing threats.
We have the greatest people in the world. We have the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest ships, most deadly ships. We don't want to have to use them, but they're the most deadly ships ever conceived. And we are not, we hope for their sake they don't do anything foolish. If they do, they will pay a price like nobody's ever paid a price.
Now, this is just the latest incident in an escalation between the United States and Iran that's been taking place over the past few months. The biggest incident that seemed to launch it was the seizure of 2 oil tankers back in May. Now, the USA has blamed Iran for attacking and harassing commercial vessels. Now, Iran has denied this. Let's quickly review the incidents that have been taking place.
It is the assessment of the United States government that the Islamic Republic of Iran is responsible for the attacks that occurred in the Gulf of Oman.
We are being clear to Iran that we are not seeking to escalate this situation. The reason that the Grace 1 was seized was because of the destination. It was going to Syria. That was a clear breach of sanctions. It wasn't because it was coming from Iran.
This is a very childish and ridiculous excuse by the British. They should officially announce that they are the servants of America and act on America's behalf.
Geopolitical analyst Kaveh Afrasiabi told us he believes it's Britain's earlier actions which led to the current standoff.
The British government has deliberately and very foolishly inserted itself in the crisis between Tehran and Washington by its illegal seizure of the Iranian oil tanker off Gibraltar 2 weeks ago. So Iran is starting to give them their own medicine. So we should not be surprised by this developing situation, which has dangerous potential to culminate into some sort of military confrontation. But the British have themselves to blame for this, and they could have avoided the crisis, and the British have a choice. They can extend this crisis and see the consequences, or they can step back, release the Iranian tanker, and I'm sure the Iranians will reciprocate.